What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Sports 360. I'm Jeff Fennell, and I'm here with my man Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports. Rob, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good too, man. Doing fine. I'm not, and I listen. Let me just say this right away. I'm not making any Atlanta jokes this week. I'm leaving that alone until the end of the year when we have to go back to Atlanta. Uh, yeah, but I'm gonna leave that alone until then. But we're coming up on Labor Day. We're a week away from Labor Day, so it's getting to be crunch time in Major League Baseball. Um, you know, not too many divisions are really in play. NL East is, I guess, the AL Central, but you know, it almost seems like the Guardians are going to win that by default because the
Yeah,
Twins and the White Sox just can't seem to get it going.
yeah. The
Um,
white the White Sox are a very disappointing team this year, man.
yeah, yep,
Because they came into the season, and I know they had their injuries coming in, but still, like up and down that roster, you might have put them right up there with the Yankees, Houston, as a top two or three team. And the fact that they're under 500 right now at the end of August, that's not something that I could have predicted. I don't think anyone saw that coming.
no, I think they are one of the more disappointing teams, if not the most disappointing team in MLB this year. I think a lot was expected. I really thought they would win that division easily. No one expected the Guardians to be as good as they are or to play as good as they have played, but I think the consensus was that the White Sox would win that division and would win it pretty handily. They just haven't. They've underperformed. And like you said, there's been some injuries, but I kept waiting for them to turn it on, and I'm now convinced that that's not going to happen. So, um, and then I guess in the NL Central, Milwaukee's falling apart.
Hmm.
So it seems like my favorite team, the St. Louis Cardinals, are going to win that division this year. Interesting team, St. Louis. You know what? I think St. Louis is going to be one of those teams no one really wants to play in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're good. They're like a really good team, and they have some guys out there who just play ball, man. And it seems like that's kind of their mo every single season. Like you don't expect much, suddenly they're 6 games up in the division, make the playoffs, and then all of a sudden they make a deep run. And I think they're playing some really inspired baseball this year, with Yachty retiring, Pujols on there trying to get to 700, Wainwright nearing the end as well. I think they're playing some inspired baseball, and it's. I know you don't like to see it, but it is a little fun to see.
Yeah, I just can't. Yeah, no, I just can't get with the Cardinals, man. I'm
The
sorry.
Yankees helped them out by sending them Jordan Montgomery too, who's been pitching pretty well for them. So my bad for
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. I think he had a rough outing though against.
He
Was he the
did.
one that pitched the first game against the Braves?
Yeah, I think
Um,
he was.
yeah, he got touched up a little bit, but St. Louis ended up taking 2 or 3 from the Braves in that series. So yeah, St. Louis is going to be a team to be reckoned with. But yeah, there's not a lot of races though that are really exciting as far as division. The excitement is going to be in the wild cards as the teams jockey for position, and that's where it's going to be really really interesting coming down the stretch. I don't think, with the exception of perhaps the NL East, I think that's a race between two good teams with the Mets and the Braves. The AL Central I find different because even if it ends up being close, it still will be because you have an overachieving Guardians team, an underachieving White Sox team, and a team in Minnesota that you just don't know what you got there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it doesn't have the same feel like it's a competitive type of a situation. it's almost like somebody has to win the division, you
Yeah,
know?
pretty much. I agree with that. That AL Central is like you got to win it. Like somebody has to get in, so
Yeah.
just take it and go.
Right, right. And so we'll see. I mean, but there'll be some interesting storylines coming down the pike as we head into September and into October. Regular season actually ends October 2nd. So, we'll be playing October baseball before we get to the playoffs. Um but listen, man, one of the things that I think right now is one of the biggest stories in baseball ever, perhaps, is, and not the biggest, but one of them is the MLBPA announcing that they are uh, attempting to unionize the minor league baseball players. I know for years people have said, why aren't minor league players represented by the Major League Baseball Players Association? And there was an answer for that, right? The union was not their representative. But that might change with the announcement last night where the union sent out union authorization cards to the minor league players. And a unionization effort is underway in baseball. I think it's one of the biggest stories to come out in years in Major League Baseball. Um, hasn't really gotten a lot of traction yet. I think that's going to change. But before we get to that, what's your response to the news that the MLBPA is looking to bring minor league players into the union fold?
I think it's about time, man. This is such huge news, and like you said, it hasn't really caught the traction of the mainstream media yet. Hopefully, it does because this is, like you said, it's one of the biggest stories coming out of baseball in a long time. And I think, for people who may not follow the minor leagues as closely or don't understand, minor leaguers have had to basically work in these unlivable conditions and receive these wages that are well below what they should be earning. And this is
Hmm.
huge step, a huge step towards fixing that up. And I think it's such a great move by the MLBPA. I'm happy to see this, and I'm excited, honestly, to see what's to come. And there's a lot of other stuff that has to go on. This is just the beginning, but hopefully this really takes off, and this really changes the dynamic of minor league baseball and really brings them up their living conditions, their wages, all that stuff, so they can really feel a part of that major league franchise. And the last line in the was released in the press release was what really got to me. It's this organizing campaign is an investment in the future of our game and our player fraternity. Minor leaguers are part of that. It's not just the 26 guys on the major league roster or the 40-man roster. It's all the minor leaguers. And I'm glad to see this happening, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, like I said, that's been talked about for years. People have said it should have happened, but everything's about timing.
Yes.
And in the last couple of years, advocates for minor leaguers has been very, very active in advocating for the rights of these minor league players, filing lawsuits and engaging in other advocacy. And that has resulted in some changes. We saw some teams increase the wages of their players. Tampa did that, for example.
Hmm.
We've seen some other teams improve the housing situation for some of their players. But it hasn't been anything that's been done across the board. But, you know, the lawsuits, the advocacy started to work a change in the atmosphere, if you will. Um, and MLB had to come to the table to settle the lawsuit to the tune of $185 million. That was just a couple of weeks ago. And so, you have players who now are speaking up, who are being more educated about their rights. They're standing up for themselves. and they were able to take down MLB, with this lawsuit that MLB just knew they were going to get dismissed because they're all powerful, but they weren't able to do it and then had to come to the bargaining table and put up $185 million to settle. And so, a lot of things were moving in the direction of these players standing up for their rights. And so a lot of it points to the time being right now for this to happen. And I think because of that, Rob, I would be very surprised if the union was not successful, if the MLBPA was not successful in this organizing drive, um, for a lot of reasons. But I think what's been going on over the past several years has made this the right time for this to happen.
Yeah, and I think the big turning point was probably the season that was lost by the minor leagues, the 2020 COVID season, where they lost the minor league game and none of these guys were paid. To my knowledge, I know David
Hmm.
Price was one of the players who
Yep.
put up his own money to support some of the minor league guys in their organization. But I think that's where the casual fan started seeing, wait a minute, these guys aren't being treated fairly. And I think that's kind of where you saw the traction going and the wheels starting to move. And we got to this point. And like I said, this is just one step. It's a huge, huge step. And I love to see it. But, you know, what's coming next is what's the great part, where these guys get to be part of that union, hopefully, and move forward with that because they deserve it, man. At the end of the day, these are guys who are sacrificing everything to try to make it in this profession, and they should be treated as such to be able to make it to that next level. So I'm happy to see this.
Yeah. And, I don't think people fully understand, um, some of the deplorable conditions that these players work under. Um, you know, I spent 10 years, as you know, I spent 10 years as a lawyer for the Major League Baseball Players Association. And I remember, I was there from 2000 to 2010. I remember shortly after I first got there, I got a call from a player and I pulled his contract and he had two rates of pay. He had a rate of pay for every day that he was in the major leagues, and he had a lower rate of pay for every day that he was in the minor leagues. They call those split contracts, right?
Mm,
So I pulled his contract and I saw his pay on the minor league side, and I said, "Oh, okay. So you get paid $2,700 a month in the minor leagues." And he goes, "No, no, 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 no. I get paid $2,700." I was like,
wow.
"What?" And the minor
Wow.
league season's 5 months. And, like right now, rookie ball players get paid $4,800 for the year. They're professional players. If you're in A ball, you get paid 11,000. Now you could get some more. Like some players are getting more, but not most of them. Most of them are not. If you're in double A, you're making $13,200 for the year.
Wow.
The poverty line is 13,500. So that means at 3 levels of the minor league system, they're below poverty level. Then you get to AAA. Oh, you're really rolling in dough. You're making $15,400. Now, again, there are some exceptions. Some players, you got some veteran players, you got some guys who played in the minor leagues, in the major leagues, who are now in the minor leagues at AAA. They're making more money. And yes, you got some guys who got big bonuses in the draft and they're down there, but hey, they're different because they got but those are the exceptions,
Mhm.
right? The majority of these players are working for substandard wages. They are below the poverty level. And that to me is just one of the things that the union, if they were to unionize, the union's going to be able to address to make better for these players.
And that's huge, man, because to add to that, there are a lot of these guys who are coming from very poor countries
Yep.
and having to leave their families and everything behind and then moving here. And with that wage they're getting, they're trying to support the family back home as well. And that's a huge thing that I think people also miss out and maybe don't see because it's not talked about. What's talked about is how this prospect is categorized, what's his expected ETA to the MLB, stuff like that. That's what they're more focused on. But this is the stuff that the dirty work, the stuff that's not talked about, the behind the scenes things that is finally coming to light, and we're able to see it not just as people who are invested in the game of baseball, but also people who are casual fans who may not follow it too in detail. So I'm glad this is coming out. I'm glad you're able to highlight those numbers, Jeff, because these are things that even I didn't know all those numbers. So I'm glad to be educated by you and hearing this because it deserves to be highlighted. It deserves to be out there. And listen, man, like I keep repeating it, but this is a huge, huge first step. And I cannot wait. And I hope that they do unionize and go through with this.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Rob. I mean, because, one of the things, that if let's think about the benefits that major league players have being unionized. First of all, you have a collective bargaining agreement, which means you have rules to the game, right? The teams and the leagues can't do anything they want to the players, right? Because
Yep.
you have a CBA, right? You have a collective bargaining agreement. There's rights and obligations on both sides of the table, right? And so players have some protections, so they have a great wage system, right? Now, this is not to say minor league players are going to get the major league wage system. They're not, right? Because they're not generating that type of revenue. But Rob, they're generating more revenue than you would think. You know what I mean? They're generating more revenue than you would think.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that in 2019, before the pandemic, the minor leagues generated about $865 million in revenue.
Wow.
They're not like they're poor. They're just not sharing the money with the players.
Yeah.
But major league players have good wages. If they have to travel, they got good travel arrangements and hotels, and they got good benefits in terms of pensions and health care, those types of things. Their IP rights are protected, right? Their intellectual property rights, where they have the right to go to the marketplace and sell their name, image, and likeness. Minor league players don't even have that. They have
Wow.
substandard housing. They don't have IP rights. They don't have due process rights. You know what I mean? So if something happens to a major league player, he can file a grievance, right? He has due process rights. Minor league players, no.
Wow.
So it's a game changer all the way around. It changes not only wages, but housing and intellectual property and benefits and you name it. There are so many things that could be improved if they were to unionize, and I think that's the thing. And for years, Rob, we read the stories about how minor league players were six to a room. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
um, Eating, cheese and crackers and stuff like that. Or, in some of these towns, some families would take in minor league players, sort of like you take in an exchange student. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They would take them into their home because they couldn't afford to have a place to live and eat on, $10,000 for over 5 months. I mean, Rob, this
And
is crazy.
even some working second jobs, third jobs on top of having to play baseball, train during the off season or before games on off days, and still having to do Ubers or Instacart or
Yeah.
whatever it is that they're doing on the side just to earn a little extra money so they can eat that day.
And a few years back, players had filed a Fair Labor Standards Act case saying they weren't being paid, according to the Fair Labor Standards Act, which, requires you to get paid at a certain rate of pay. And do you know Major League Baseball said, no, 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 these are specialty workers. They're sort of
Mm,
like, those workers that, seasonal workers that, come around, work a couple of months a year and all the rest of it because there's certain special exemptions for seasonal workers. And so that's what they argued. And then they got Congress behind them to pass some act to keep the players from pursuing their rights under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So MLB has used its muscle in the past to squash these players. If the players are unionized, Rob, that's going to end. That's the whole point of being unionized. You finally have the power of the collective, right? To sit down at a bargaining table and to negotiate your terms and conditions of employment, right? So no longer will MLB just simply say this is how it's going to be. They will have to deal with the union. But as you've been saying throughout, our conversation here, the unionization effort that we know of right now with the cards going out to the players, it's only the first step, right? It's only the first step.
Yeah.
Now the players have to vote in favor of the union. And Rob, I would have to think, I'm interested in your take on this, but I would have to think that given the substandard wages, given the substandard housing, you know, no benefits really to speak of, um, no IP rights to speak of, no due process rights to speak of. It would seem to me that players would almost automatically vote yes for the union, right?
Yeah.
I mean, life would be better for them. And so I don't know. It seems to me that the cards are in place here for the union to be successful. But again, as you said, it's the first step. But I would have to think that players would be just excited at the opportunity to become a part of the Major League Baseball Players Association.
Yeah, I think they must have been throwing parties, man, once they got these cards.
Yeah,
Because this is such a great opportunity for them to finally capitalize where, players past, even current major league players had to experience all this stuff. And now these guys, get to be part of that big change. So I would think everyone's voting yes, and unless they want to figure out more information, which is fine, because
yeah,
there is going to be a different side to it. More stuff is going to come out, more details and all that. But I think when you get this card, whether it's in the mail or however they receive these cards, voting yes would be start there, and then let's figure out everything else, because this is such a huge thing. It's such a difference maker. I mean, you highlighted all the stuff that comes with it. I can't imagine not voting yes on something like this, man.
yeah. I mean, it's same here. But as you said, I mean, typically, Rob, I've come out of I come out of the labor movement even before I was at the MLBPA. I worked in organized labor, and typically, when you have a union campaign, union organizing drive, the employer engages in an anti-union campaign,
Hmm.
right? And the employer goes on the offensive, telling the employees why they don't need a union and all the benefits of keeping a union out. And some employers actually start firing, you know, key employees. When I say key employees, those employees who are staunch union advocates or union leaders, all of a sudden they start making their lives miserable. Or, like I said, they may fire them in order to intimidate the other workers, right? To not support the union.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of that in the normal industrial process. I don't think we'll see as much of that here, but who knows? But I do think MLB is going to engage in an anti-union campaign, and it may be one that scares players. And I think one of the things we're probably going to hear is MLB saying, if there's a union, then you know we might not be able to sustain the minor
Hmm.
leagues.
Yep.
You know.
And that's kind of where I was hinting at with that too, because we saw a big chunk of minor league teams
Yep.
already
Mhm.
get eliminated, and I
Mhm.
think once this process comes in, now the lower levels, low A, rookie ball, things like that, we may see on the fence, we'll call it. So it'll be interesting to see what the pushback will be from the MLB side with these
Yeah.
conversations ongoing.
Yeah. But you wanna know something, Rob? Back in 1966 when the MLBPA formed, you know what MLB said? if the union forms, it's going to destroy baseball. So, in other words, it's the same argument. They said it when the MLBPA was forming, right?
Yeah,
That it was going and employers often say that. If the union comes in, I gotta go out of business. It's just a threat
yeah,
most of the time, if not all of the times. But, you know, we haven't heard anything yet. Interestingly enough, right? This story broke last night as we're talking on Monday night. This story broke on Sunday evening or Sunday night
yeah.
with the MLBPA sending out union authorization cards to minor league players. And as we're talking here now on Monday evening, haven't heard anything yet from MLB, which I take as a sign of them getting their legal and strategic ducks in a row before they come out with any kind of public response. Um, I haven't seen anything from any players as of yet either, but I would imagine that's going to change as guys get to the ballpark and get interviewed. But have you seen anything from players so far?
I have not yet. Not. I'm checking now, and I don't see anything. So I assume, like you said, it'll probably come out in the next day or two when the Max Scherzers or whoever. Zach Brain, I think, is in the union and the executive board, and some of those guys are going to get interviewed in the next day or two, and we'll see. Stuff is, we'll see what they say. But yeah, I haven't seen anything from the MLB side or any of the players at this point.
Yeah. But I think one of the things we have to keep our eye on in the next couple of days is one of the things is, how many players are voting yes, because you might have seen the reports, under the law, if there's 30%, if 30% of the players in this case say yes, I want the union, then then the PA can go to the National Labor Relations Board and petition for an election.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you, the way I grew up in the labor movement, no union does that. In a typical situation, just get 30% and then go, because that's the minimum that you would need to trigger the right for an election. Most unions will get 50, 60, or even more percent of the cards signed and then petition for the election because they understand something. Between the time they petition for an election and the time you have an election, there's going to be some attrition. Some
Hmm.
of the people who said yes are gonna be intimidated by the employer, fired, or you know what I mean? Something's going to happen, and that 50% is gonna turn to 40% or less. So if you only have 30%, right, you may lose even that, a portion of that before you even get started. So most unions get far more than that, and I would imagine that the MLBPA is going to do that as well. I don't think they're gonna get 30% and run to the labor board and say, "Let's have an election."
Yeah.
I think they'll let the cards continue to come in because I think they probably believe that a sizable majority will will sign the cards, you know? Now they could, if they got a sizable majority, they could go to MLB and say, "Voluntarily recognize us." But most employers don't do
Mm.
that. They make the employees go through the election. So it's going to, I mean, I think there's layers here, in the coming days and weeks to see how this campaign on both sides, on the union side and on MLB side, how it plays out. And you know what else is really interesting? The MLB network. Okay. Because you have to believe that MLB will use its network, its television network, for some anti-unionization propaganda.
Yep. That's almost expected, man.
Oh,
It
yeah.
happened. You kind of saw it during the lockout a little bit, where the news they
Yep.
were reporting was very different than what was actually happening. So, and then even when the lockout ended, like kind of the narrative they were talking about, I would say, was
Yeah.
very different. It just had a different tone to it. So I would expect nothing less this time around as well.
Yeah.
So can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait either, but Rob, I'm telling you, man, it's just a funny thing. As I go back to that story where I said, man, I didn't realize that the wages were so low. You know what I mean? And because who would think that a professional athlete, because they're professionals, if they're getting paid, they're professionals, right?
Yes,
Would be paid so low, below poverty level. That's embarrassing.
it is. And then expected to perform at an elite level.
Yes.
And that's the mental strain of it alone
Yeah.
is is concerning. Never
Yeah.
mind everything else.
It really is amazing. It really is amazing. But, maybe, this is something that, as you said, is the first step of a major shift in in Major League Baseball, right? Where you're now going to have minor league players represented by Major League Baseball Players Association. So we will stay tuned on this one and see, how things develop. Um, and listen, before we leave, man, we got to touch on our teams. I always got to talk about my Mets. See, it's funny how I always talk about my Mets now because they're good. Like last year, the year before, when the Mets weren't good, anybody who listened to us know he never talked about the Mets as much as he talks about them now. Come on, man. Act like you know. It was nothing to talk about, okay?
Yeah.
When you win, you got some stuff to talk about, right? So, the Mets are doing better this year, so it's stuff to talk about. But, you and I were talking about the Yankees before we went live here. And uh, I would have I would have to say that most Yankee fans were disappointed with the last 2 games in Oakland, no? I mean, they won the first 2 on a 5-game winning streak and then lost the last 2. And look, the Yankees' playoff position is secure, but you just want them to hit some real consistency and play good baseball, don't you?
You definitely do, man. And listen, we're riding pretty high. They beat the your Mets 2 games in a row, swept that.
Yeah, I had to
Exactly
put
what
that
I
in there.
asked for. I asked for a sweep and they gave it to me.
They sure
But
did.
yeah, then they go into Oakland and you kind of expect at least minimum 3 out of 4 in
Yeah.
Oakland. Maybe you know, baseball play does his baseball thing and the Yankees lose the game there. But they ended up splitting the series, losing the last 2. And then last night's game, they just came out so flat.
Mm,
And you could kind of see it in the body language, the energy. It was
yeah.
super flat. And it was like, if you're going to lose the game, lose it because you were playing hard and the team just played a little bit better than you, because Oakland is capable of winning games. Sure, they're a baseball team. They're going to win some games and they're going to lose a lot more, but don't go out there and play flat in a game like that. Those are games that you have to win, especially late in the season, where the Blue Jays will lose a game, the Rays will lose a game, and getting that extra game in the standings. While yeah, they have a good lead, and I think they're going to end up winning the division, no problem. But just gaining that extra game here and there, when you're a team that's been struggling for the last, we'll say, month and change, that's huge. So to see
Mhm.
them play flat like that, um, it was more disappointing. Like I said, I'm not in panic mode. They were willing, they pull off a 5-game winning streak, so they're capable of playing good baseball against good teams. But I need to see consistency. They're going against the Angels now, so I expect a sweep, to be honest, or at the very least, just win the series, win the first game, and then take the series. That's what I need the Yankees to do. Just play better baseball overall. Don't come out into a game looking flat. That's all I ask for, Jeff. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing for the Yankees this year is that I really believe, as of right now, and things could change, but I really believe that right now, the only team they have to be concerned with is Houston.
Yeah,
I really do. I think they're better than all the other if the all the other teams that as of right now are in the postseason and even those who still have a chance to get in. I think they're better than them. Doesn't mean that they automatically win, but I think they're better than Toronto and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, if they hit their stride and get a little bit, get their feet under them, get a little bit healthier, may be a little bit of a concern going forward. But right now, the only one, as of right now, to me, it's Houston. I think the Yankees can beat Toronto. I think they push come to shove. I think they'll beat Tampa Bay. Um, I don't count anybody in the West. I mean, in the Central as worthy of a
Yeah,
conversation. Um, so I think it's Houston. But but again, that's just on paper, Rob. And I think to your point, you have to play better. You just can't, roll the pinstripes out there and go, we're gonna win. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So we'll see. They got a good month or so to get it together. At least they're showing some signs, right? I think
they
this
are.
week's an important week for them. They have to have another good week to build upon what was a pretty good week last week, despite the last two games in Oakland. So.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the building blocks. Is what you say. If
Hmm.
they can, I don't know how many games they play this week. I don't know if they play the full week, but if you play 6 games in a week and you can take four, I'll take that. Go four and
Yeah.
two in 6 games, stuff like that. Win 7 out of 10. That's kind of where you start building that momentum, and eventually, you get things going. You're like, all right, this is how we used to play. And I know they're getting healthy now too. They just got Clay Holmes
Hmm.
back today. John Carlos is back. He's got to find his stride. So little by little, you hope that as these guys start coming back, they start to win 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 5 out of 7, and really start building momentum towards October.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Um, Last thing before we leave, you have any thoughts on the extensions that we've been seeing? Michael Harris with the Braves signed an extension that could pay him $102 million if the options are exercised. I believe the guaranteed money is $77 million. Um, Julio Rodriguez with the Mariners signed a deal that guarantees him $210 million and could go as high as $400 million or over $400 million, 470, I believe, if the options are exercised by the club, and it will be a 14-year deal, by the way. But there've been some extensions that have been done in August, which is not usually the time you see extensions. Typically, you see them in spring training.
Hmm.
So the timing of the extensions, and then, like in the case of both Julio Rodriguez and Michael Harris, these are two players who don't even have a year of experience, and they're being extended. And we even saw it, in spring training with Wander Franco, who is another player who had less than a year of major league service, and he got $182 million. What are your thoughts, man, of these extensions, either the timing or the dollars, and the time, major league service wise, in which these players are signing?
First of all, I don't know what Atlanta's doing because they sign everybody to long-term deals, and I love it. They're keeping
Hmm.
their core intact for, they started with Acuna, then Albies, and they're signing all these guys to deals that when you look at it, it's like, wow, they signed for like a hometown discount kind of thing. But
Hmm.
these guys are still getting paid. They're getting their money. I like seeing guys get their money. I'm pro player, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But yeah, it is weird to see these extensions happening so early in their careers, where, like you said, they don't have a full year of service yet, and then they're getting these massive extensions. And I think it boils down to the development of players and how good these players are right out the gate, um, and just how great these players are in general. Julio Rodriguez is a guy expected to be a star, and he's come out into the scene and he hasn't disappointed. He's done a great job with Seattle, really led that team. And the same thing with Harris, who just came on and was just knocking the cover off the ball left and right. So, I mean, it's surprising to see it, especially like you said, the timing being in August and these guys signing long-term extensions. But I think it's a trend that we're going to continue to see with younger players who come into the league and just continue their great pace, continue their great production from the minor leagues up to the major league level. I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see this, and instead of avoiding situations like what we will see with Aaron Judge and the Yankees, where they had a chance maybe to lock him up a couple years ago, and instead he's going into free agency. So yeah, man, keep keep signing those checks. That's what I got to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with all that you said. It's surprising. It's good to see players getting paid. One of my concerns is, and it sounds crazy when you see the numbers being, paid out, but are players getting their value? And I know that
Yeah,
sounds crazy, right? Because you say that's a lot of money. That's not the point. It's not the point whether it's a lot of money. It's whether they're getting their value. And I think that's a question for another day. We can get into detail on that, but that's a legitimate question. But you know what I think, Rob, real quickly, man, is this. I look at these deals and I say, okay, these clubs are spending money like they got it and like they
hmm
know they're gonna having it. So I'm thinking to myself, the business is flush right now. And so they could say all they want about the effects of the pandemic or whatever. But one of the things I know about these sports leagues, they're never looking at today. Their eyes are always on the future. And I don't know, Rob, where the money's coming from. I don't know if it's coming from sports gambling. I don't know if it's coming from streaming. I don't know where it's coming from. But these clubs understand something. They got money coming. Okay. They
Yep.
know. And so that's why they're not hesitant to go out here and engage in this kind of conduct, locking up players really early. Because especially when you have control over a player for at least 6 seasons, depending upon whether you option him or not, it could be 7 or 8 seasons, right? You have control over that player. And you can just say, yeah, I think he's good, but let me see how he plays. Right? You could at least do that for a couple of years. Now,
Yeah.
if he continues to be a superstar, the price of the ticket could go higher, but at least at that point, you know what you have. To do it so early, a guy like Julio Rodriguez, you think, yeah, he's a can't miss guy. Michael Harris, he's a good player. He's not Julio Rodriguez.
Yep.
I mean, look at their contracts. Their contracts say he's not Julio Rodriguez, right?
Yeah.
One guy got 70, the other guy got 210, right? So why don't you know what I'm saying? So when clubs could wait but don't, there's a reason why. Okay. I don't know. I'm not saying I know what the reason is, but I believe it has to do with their fiscal confidence. They know they got money and they know more is in the pipeline. And maybe we'll see over the next year or two, some big deals being announced or, some big stories coming out about how much revenue has come from different sources that right now are, you know, sort of in their beginning stages. You know what I'm saying? So
So
we'll
that's a
see,
great
man.
point. That's a great point because I laugh because during the lockout, as these guys are fighting, MLB signed a deal with Apple and I believe Amazon
Mhm.
Prime. And
Yep.
it's like, you're fighting right here, but you just got two gigantic TV deals. So,
Mhm.
all right. Okay.
Yeah, and you have to feel more is coming because that's where the world
Yeah.
is going now with streaming. And
Yep.
again, I don't think we've seen yet the impact of sports betting. You
Oh,
know what I
no.
mean? In terms of it being a real revenue generator for the leagues. I don't
Yeah.
think we've really tapped into that yet, but we
That's
will. Oh, and
coming.
the other thing that's coming too under the CBA, patches on uniforms.
That's true. Yep. I forgot about that.
That's another revenue stream that they didn't have before. So I think the teams are looking at all this and probably things that I haven't discussed and we're not thinking about and saying, fellas,
Yep.
we got some money coming in. Okay. And they're locking up guys. And when they lock up guys, you know what they do? They take them out of arbitration and they take them out of free agency.
Yeah.
Right? And they
Yep.
have fixed labor costs, which I think help them with, having depreciating assets and all the rest of that stuff when they want to do business in the marketplace and when they want to sell the team. And so I think it has all these residual benefits as well. So this is not about, you know, it's never about clubs wanting to be nice to players. That's this
No.
is business, bro. This is business, man. So anyway, But it's good to see players getting paid because that is life-changing money. There's no doubt about that for both, Michael Harris and for Julio Rodriguez. Austin Riley signed for over $200 million, so
Yep.
congratulations to him. And there's going to be other players as well. I think Dansby Swanson's about to re-sign too with the Braves, and he's probably going to forego free agency, and he's
Yeah.
going to stay with the Braves. So, to your point about how the Braves lock up their core, if they sign Swanson before the end of the season, that's more evidence of that very point. So we'll see.
Yeah. Should be good.
Yep.
Should be good.
All right, brother. Well, listen, I hope you have a good week. I hope the Yankees have a good week. Hope my Mets have a good week. They have the Dodgers coming into Citi Field starting Tuesday. So that's going to be a good series, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then they have to go on from there. And I'm just hoping my Mets can continue to play some good baseball, and let's see them in the postseason. So, all right, brother. Listen, we're going to get on up out of here right now, but it's good talking with you, and we'll come back next week. We'll do it again, another edition of Sports 360, and we'll see what stories we'll be covering at that point. But until then, be good, brother, and we'll talk again next week.